Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning and good evening to those watching from different parts of the world. Welcome to Building the Case for Gender Lens Investing Across Asia. I am Diana Watson, Partnerships Manager at AVPN, and I am delighted to have you join us today. For those of you who do not know about AVPN, we are a network of funders and resource providers with over 600 members across 32 markets. Our mandate is to move more capital towards impact in Asia by providing social investors like yourself opportunities to connect, learn, and lead. We are sharing highlights of our day live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, so don't forget to share your experience with us by sharing the hashtag AVPN2020. In today's session, we will be covering key findings from a new report on investment vehicles, a panel discussion, time for audience Q&A, and throughout the session there will be interactive activities which we encourage you to participate in. A few housekeeping announcements before moving on to the program. I will be ensuring your learning experience with us this afternoon is a meaningful one. If you are finding that my webcam video is facing a lag, please pause the video by hovering over the face to reduce the impact on your internet bandwidth. If you are facing any other technical challenges, please do not hesitate to reach out to us through the Q&A pod or email our tech support. The link is in the bottom left-hand box on your screen. We will be commencing shortly, but before we kick off our session, I would like to highlight a few features in this room to keep the conversation lively. If at any point you get disconnected or have a bad connection, try to log out of the app and then log back in. Or if you're using the browser, refresh the page. Ensure that you are not running other programs in the background. Please note that this session will be recorded, and you will be able to access the recording from conference.avpn.asia. If you have any questions for your speakers, please type them in the Q&A pod, and we will convey these questions to our moderator. And now, I would like to introduce you to Ayaka Matsuno, Director of the Gender Investment and Innovation Department at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Ayaka leads the department that manages the operation of the Asia Women Impact Fund, an initiative to invest up to $100 million from the foundation to pursue gender lens investments. Ayaka will be providing welcoming remarks for this session. And Ayaka, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Diana. Good afternoon from Tokyo, Japan, and once again welcome you all to the session Building the Case for Gender Lens Investing Across Asia. My name is Ayaka Matsuno, Director of Gender Investment and Innovation Department of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, the knowledge partner of AVPN 2020. The Sasakawa Peace Foundation, we are committed to promote gender lens investing as we see that the gender lens investing is key to economic development of the region and can accelerate the more inclusive and dynamic and sustainable development for all. Since 2017, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation set women's empowerment as one of our 5 strategic goals. My department is the lead in achieving our goal to promote women's empowerment, especially women's economic empowerment. With our conviction, we set up the Asia Women Impact Fund in 2017. We intentionally apply the gender lens to our investment principle and process, and we plan to invest up to $100 million of our endowment to improve women's financial access, financial inclusion, and empower women. Because of this Asia Women Impact Fund initiative, we are often given opportunities to share our experience in practicing gender lens investing, through which we are promoting the concept of gender lens investing, and we also commission insightful research, the one that we are going to share with you today. This research, Gender Lens Investing Landscape East and Southeast Asia, is a product of our partnership with Catalyst at Large and Sagana. We can say this report is the first of its kind in terms of looking into gender lens investing vehicles in both public and private markets. As you will see in the report, the space is growing rapidly and diversifying quite a lot with new players and new vehicles. Looking back, at that time when we first started the Asia Women Impact Fund in 2017, we found it challenging to find investable gender lens investing vehicle. But now in 2020, we are excited to witness the development in Asia, now the second largest in the world. We hope that this report and today's session can inspire more investors to follow. Lastly, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our partner, Suzanne Beagle of Catalyst at Large, Raya Pap and Ahmed Aslam of Sagana, and my team members, Natasha Shi and Yuka Yabashi, for their passion and dedication to write this landscape research as thorough as possible. And last but not least, thank you all for those people who joined today, and then also Hyojun and Simba to join us. Without further ado, I would like to give this floor to Suzanne, our moderator of today's session. Thank you and have a great session.
Thank you so much, Ayaka-san. And thank you to AVPN for giving us this opportunity to share the 2019 scan of the Gender Lens Investing Funds landscape for East and Southeast Asia. And thank you to Sasakawa Peace Foundation for giving us the chance to do this work together in the field. I think we share a commitment to make sure that people know how very much there is to invest in with a gender lens and how the field is growing. I'd like to introduce my two co-presenters for this part of our session, Raya Pap, founding partner of Sagana, which is a global impact investing advisory firm. Raya was based in Singapore for about 10 years, but is now in Europe, and I'm so glad to be partnering with her on this piece of work. Natasha Shi, Senior Investment Officer at Sasakawa Peace Foundation, was one of our absolute key team members in addition to being sponsor of this project. And she has a background in investment, but also impact management and measurement. And we had some very rich conversations about what good looks like in these funds. Now, we have a very short poll for you because we really wanted to get a sense of who's in the audience. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the structure of our session, who's on with us, why we're doing this, and more. So we'd just love it if you would take a minute to answer, first of all, in what capacity you're here, and then just a little bit about your own investing and where you are on your gender lens investing journey and what level you would rate your awareness of market opportunities. And I know we have some people on the call that are old-timers who've been doing this for quite some time, some who are the godfathers and godmothers of the impact investing space, and people who are very, very new to this. So if you can just take a minute, it's interesting to see, I think, for everybody who's here. While that's happening and while you're filling in that information, let me give you a little bit of a preview of the structure of our session. I'm going to share a little bit of a background on why we did this latest report. Then Raya, Natasha, and I will share some highlights from the report itself. And I do want to mention Ahmed Aslam, who is on the Sagana team, who couldn't be part of this presentation, but is the engine behind so much of this work. Then we'd like to invite two colleagues from Australia and East Asia to join us for some commentary from their perspectives. And then everybody will join me for a Q&A session, and we'll do a final wrap-up. But please feel free to be typing in your questions and your thoughts and your comments as we go. I can't guarantee that I'll be seeing them as they come, but I know that all of us will be paying attention. So if you think about the constellation of people who are here, I'm just looking in the chat window, we have a real diversity of people that are with us. And most of you have not actually invested in one of the more gender lens vehicles in Asia. For the most part, people are they're interested or you're intentional. So you're building your strategies, but not that many people who would say we've got it nailed. And I'm going to say we're all on a journey. It's a process. And then finally, just rating our awareness about the market offerings. This is the thing. More than 50% of you said, I don't know much about what's out there in the market. And I think this is one of the things that we really wanted to tackle with this report. So first of all, I want to really just talk about why gender lens investing is important and why am I here talking to you. All of my work for the past 20 years has been around gender lens investing and impact investing, and I do a combination of co-producing the Gender Smart Investing Summit, but also running Catalyst at Large, which is my consultancy. And I get the pleasure of talking to people from all over the world about where they are in their gender lens investing journeys and helping people understand the market. So why gender lens investing? Today is Gender Day for AVPN, and I think if you're here, you know why gender lens investing is important. I want to quote a McKinsey report from last month, just a couple of weeks ago. Here we are in the middle of the COVID crisis, where they said inclusion and diversity are at risk in the crisis, but are critical for business recovery, resilience, and reimagination. And so I think the fund managers who are behind the funds that we've done and looked at in this scan are a demonstration of resilience and reimagination and really pushing the boundaries. So we know that investment is just one tool, but for everyone in the AVPN community, it's an important tool to see opportunity to mitigate risk, to complement a philanthropic strategy, to complement change in companies, in corporations, public policy, and civil society, to make the change in how we use capital because it's the smart thing to do and because it's the right thing to do. Whether you lead with a gender equality agenda through the entrepreneurs you invest in or the impact that they have through the value chain, or you lead with poverty alleviation or recognizing the power of new technology on the social issues, addressing the needs, you can use a gender lens intentionally in your investments. And we aren't going to talk about ranking or rating these vehicles, although our teams certainly have a point of view about that. We want to share with you how and where money is moving. And this is a snapshot and a trend analysis, which we hope will establish a baseline for the region. Now, I really need to emphasize that this is a sneak preview. We've not yet published the report, and that's because the underlying Project SAGE report, on which a lot of the private market data is based, isn't coming out until the end of June. And so we beg your forgiveness in saying, please treat this as a sneak preview. Please don't tweet. Please don't post about this, the data specifically. Feel free to post about what you think about the session and the conversation, but stay tuned for till the end of June on these final reports. And in the vein of a sneak preview, yeah, thank you just for not sharing that information. There have been several reports in the state of the field in Southeast and East Asia, and this one is using data from 2019 and some different sources and approaches. And we think it's important to track the progress, to dispel also any myths that there isn't anything to invest in. There are. And so we wanted to make a start of it, of this global scan, and then we've got that data both from Veris Wealth Partners, which is on the public market side, and on Project SAGE on the private market side. And then we did a deep dive in Southeast Asia and East Asia, and we did 20 interviews with fund managers. So you're going to get the benefit of hearing some of the highlights from that across public and private markets. And please recognize that this work was done pre-COVID. We recognize so much is changing, and some of these entities have put in place specific COVID vehicles, but our hope is that the understanding and the appreciation of value of gender balance in funds, as well as in the underlying companies that those funds invest in, is growing even more so with the crisis. So we're not going to talk a lot about the COVID-specific vehicles, but we just want you to have a sense that many of them do. And hopefully this will be useful for you in your strategy work, and really to see the progression of where the market is headed. So I'm excited to be sharing where the field is today, how it's evolving, and to know that you're part of that change. And so in this COVID moment and beyond, I believe the opening for change is here and vast. So I'm going to turn it over to Raya Pat, my colleague.
Wonderful, Suzanne. Thank you so much. I am very excited to present this inaugural landscape report for Gender Lens Investing in East and Southeast Asia. Super excited to have everybody on the session with us, and very grateful to the Sasakawa Peace Foundation for making this possible, and to my co-authors in pulling this all together. It was a lot of work and lots of fun, and very, very insightful to be able to talk to so many of you fund managers who are already applying a gender lens. So with that, let me jump in and say there are excuse me, really three key takeaways across the gender lens vehicles that we evaluated in East and Southeast Asia. The first one is that gender lens is already a representative of a fairly large pool of capital, and that pool of capital is rapidly growing. That's both globally and within Asia, which is very exciting. The second takeaway is that as a cross-cutting theme and investment strategy, gender lens touches almost all asset classes, which you'll see here in a minute, and a very wide range of investors. And the third thing that we had summarized in our takeaways was that while some funds are explicit in their gender lens and their approach, they call it out, they talk about it, they lead with it, there are also a lot of funds that don't do that. They may not even publicly state that they're investing with a gender lens, but they are integrating it into their investment process, into their portfolio management, and it's becoming a best practice, not only to harness the power of diverse teams, but also to deploy a gender lens in solving business problems and identifying opportunities that they otherwise may not have seen in terms of growing the business and creating new products and services. So with that, let me come to the headlines here. Asia is the second largest gender lens investing region with 47 investment vehicles. Most of those are in the private markets with 37 vehicles, and 10 of those are in the public markets. You'll notice at the bottom that this is a relatively new investment approach with 63% of the vehicles being set up, this is globally, in either 2018 or 2019. And as I mentioned, it is a rapidly growing pool of capital and strategy with 47% growth in the number of funds and 65% growth in AUM from last year. In regards to the actual East Asia and Southeast Asia numbers in terms of AUM, you'll see that it almost was a five-fold growth from when the tracking started in 2017 to 2018, and then a doubling from 2018 to 19 to reach a very impressive $1.4 billion that is being deployed today with an investor lens in East and Southeast Asia. On the private market side, the average AUM of a fund is 43 million, and slightly larger on the public market side of 48 million. My final three slides go through the key findings, some of the key findings across the capital markets. The first one, as I mentioned, gender lens investing really is appealing to a highly diverse set of investors. So we have family offices, high net worth individuals, retail investors investing with a gender lens. We also have public and private pension funds, government agencies, development finance institutions, and philanthropic organizations. Most of those investors, interestingly, are seeking market rate returns. Of course, some of them, especially more on the philanthropic or development agency side, are providing some de-risking mechanisms as we shift to a more gender equitable world. And finally, gender lens investing vehicles have covered a wide range in terms of size, from under $5 million, more on the private market side, to over $300 million on the public market side, and do cover almost all asset classes. So super excited to share the report in a couple of weeks where you can see case studies on a number of those funds. The second takeaway or finding was that while funds started earlier on really with a gender lens, as they would describe, of women-led businesses, women entrepreneurs, or promoting women in senior leadership roles, the application of gender lens investing has expanded to also really cover the value chain of a business. So how are companies designing products with women in mind, and what opportunities are they spotting there? How are they marketing and distributing their products and services to women? How are they servicing their products after the sale? And by understanding the segment of women, they're finding both business opportunities and the ability to strengthen their supply chain. And finally, we found some significant, robust discussion around the language that's being used around gender lens investing. There's a lot of diversity and different levels, a lot of diversity in how people are talking about it, with different levels of understanding of where their investors are coming from. So from a fund level, it was really focused on where are their investors in terms of their awareness and understanding of gender lens investing. In private market vehicles, so private equity and private debt funds, we are finding that funds are using gender as opposed to moving away from terms like women and female to be more inclusive. We're finding in the public markets, especially on the retail funds, that they're using language that's easily understood by the public, so almost to the contrary. They're using terms like women power, women supporter, and the women fund. There is overall less use of the term women-led businesses as investors become and the funds become more inclusive, expanding gender lens investing into the value chain of a business, and also recognizing very much that diverse teams and male-led businesses also can have a very positive impact on women and girls. And finally, many funds don't use language around gender, but they are using a gender lens as they create their investment strategies, as they do their diligence, as they decide which companies to invest in. They're doing that especially on the public market side, where they're focusing on improvements in the workplace, that it benefits all genders, and also are taking care not to reinforce stereotypes of women's role in society. So that was a lot in a very short time, but I hope that gives you an overview of the entire capital market spectrum of gender lens investing in East and Southeast Asia. And as we head in now to a deeper dive onto the private market side and the public market side, I would love to ask Diana if she could put the poll up so that we could see the interest level in terms of whether you as the audience focus more on public markets, private market investments, or equally on both. Thank you very much. Great. Looks like we have a bit more on the private market side, which I think is consistent with also the number of gender lens funds, a larger number in the private markets. But of course, capital-wise, there's also substantial amounts of capital in the public markets. So thank you very much for that. And Suzanne, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so let me give you a very quick tour about the private market side. And I am this is just going to be a whiz through. As Raya mentioned, we have seen tremendous growth in the number of vehicles and I would say the shape of vehicles in the region. And you can't tell that just from looking at the numbers, but when you see the report, the 20 interviews that we did of both public and private funds, we bring a lot to life about how people are investing in addition to what they're investing in. So there are 24 funds in East and Southeast Asia. You see that number 37 because we've included South Asia in this big number as of late 2019. And I'll say this data goes through late 2019. And just to give you a sense of the global perspective, we went from 57 funds, 58 funds to 87 funds from 2017 to 2018, and then 100 to 138 funds globally on the private market side. That's venture capital, private equity, private debt in 2019. And in terms of capital raised, it jumped from 1.1 billion raised to 2.2, and then all the way up to 4.8 billion. So the market is definitely growing. It's small. It's still a very small slice of the market, but it's growing. And the numbers tell one story, but I think the key is to really think about what we know about these funds. So for one piece of the puzzle, there are a lot of first-time funds. Now, this doesn't mean when you see first-time funds that means that those fund managers are not really experienced fund managers, but it's their first explicit gender lens fund. And that's really showing the innovation that's happening in the market, and also new players, new actors, which is really exciting. It's also a challenge because for first-time fund managers, there are a lot of barriers in the market. And we talk to people about the fundraising challenge, that there is a mythology that first-time fund managers are riskier, which they're not. But one of the things that you see is that you can't get to a second or third fund if you don't have a first fund. So we saw also a lot of second fund managers, and many of these really have started since 2017. Almost 70% of the funds were set up since 2017. And across all the funds, 80% were private market vehicles. So one of the things that I'm really excited about is also the diversity just in size. So you have funds that are from $5 million, less than $5 million, all the way up to $500 million. So if there's also a mythology of we can't get to scale, we can get to scale. We wanted to take a look at the sectors, the themes, the SDGs, the thesis behind these funds. And we really wanted people to realize that it's not just pink things that people are investing in with a gender lens. Healthcare, education, and agriculture are the three highest, and that's not surprising because of how important agriculture is in the region. But we saw things around aging, around ocean health, around deep technology, around waste and recycling, a lot of things that connect to climate. And across the SDGs, decent work and economic growth, in addition to, of course, SDG 5, gender equality, were the highest. But you had good health and well-being and reduced inequalities as a really, really major focus. And so you'll be able to, in the actual report, just go through and really see who's investing in what. From a stage perspective, almost 60% will invest in early stage. And so for those people that are entrepreneurs or working with entrepreneurs on this call, it's important to know that that is where a lot of this capital is going, and it's still nowhere near enough, but that it's growing. And these funds are, I would say, 50% of them self-identified as impact-driven, and 50% of them really identified as more market-driven. So impact-driven doesn't necessarily mean that they're not commercial at all. It means that they're commercial, but they have a real impact mandate. And then from a market-driven standpoint, we know that some people are really out to really demonstrate that investing in women is smart. So it's again, it's the smart thing to do, not just the right thing to do. I want to talk a little bit about what Raya brought up in her part, which is that only 38% of the gender lens investing funds in Asia have gender balanced partnership teams. And IFC did a really excellent report last year, which I would really encourage you to take a look at. Came out in March of 2019, talking about how gender diverse teams outperform either all male or all female teams. So we did a little bit of looking about who's really at the venture partner level or the senior level, and then at the investment committee level, who's making the investment decisions. And so I think Raya might talk about that a little bit more, but just really thinking about not only, again, what people are investing in, but who's doing the investing. And I wanted to also point out a little bit about the incentive structures. And we asked a lot of questions about the process that people are using to make these investments. And so part of that was, are the fund managers being incentivized on really the gender performance that they're achieving? So we wanted to call out Capital for Development Partners, Bamboo Capital Partners, and CEEF. And I think all of you are on the call today, even if we can't hear your voices, just really looking at this question of how do we really make sure there's alignment between the fund managers and the investees and the investors, so that people really know what it is we're going for. And it might, and many people are really going far beyond counting women, really to valuing women. We know that from a de-risking standpoint, there are a number of investors also who are playing an active role in providing additional capital for TA, technical assistance, but also de-risking in the form of first loss and other vehicles. And so there's a lot more that I could share about that composition. What I really wish that we had time for is to just bring out the richness of the diversity and what people are investing in, but you're going to get to hear that in a little bit. So I'm going to just leave off on that very quick run through and switch gears and invite Natasha to share with us a little bit about what we heard on the public market side.
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay, is this slide showing public markets? So yeah, thank you, Suzanne. I'm Natasha Shi, Senior Investment Officer at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. So very quickly, I'll take you through our findings on GLI vehicles on public market, which are the funds with a gender focus that are listed on stock exchanges. The chart over here shows the number of GLI public market funds in each region. And according to our data, currently there are 54 public market funds with a gender focus globally, out of which 10 are in Asia, which is actually the second largest behind North America. Total AUM of the 10 funds in Asia is around $478 million US, which gives us an average AUM per fund of around $48 million US. Here are some key qualitative findings on the GLI public market funds under our research. Firstly, our motivations of fund managers to set up those funds. On the public market side, it can be broadly categorized into two types of motivations: market-driven and value-driven. Market-driven, meaning fund managers are convinced that gender equality leads to better performance. Therefore, they set up funds to pursue better profit. Value-driven, meaning that at the time of implementing the GLI strategy, the evidence around its success was not yet proven, but the fund managers believe in its value and wanted to pioneer the business case. So we see both motivations in Asia and public market. Secondly, on the gender lens criteria that are adopted by the funds, we found that the two most common sets of criteria are around women leadership and women's participation in workforce. For example, percentage of new female hiring and promotion, and implementation of gender diversity policy and programs. There are intentions to adopt other types of gender criteria. However, the challenge remains the lack of consistent and high-quality gender performance data from the companies. To this point, Japan appears to be the only country in the region that has mandatory gender data disclosure requirement by the government. This may also explain why 8 out of the 10 funds in Asia under our research are from Japan. Okay. Now let's take a look at the 10 GLI public market funds in our report. Among the 10, there are 7 mutual funds, 2 ETFs, and 1 bond. 8 are based in Japan, as we mentioned, 1 in Singapore, and 1 in South Korea. In addition, 5 out of 10 were set up in the past 3 years, implying that it is a new concept that is gaining traction. So now I would like to call out to Merit Securities, one of the fund managers that is featured in our report, to share a little bit about what motivates you to set up the Women Fund, which is the first GLI public fund in South Korea, and how has the market responded to this fund so far? Jinping, over to you.
Thank you, Natasha. Korea has largely achieved gender equality in education. In fact, since mid-2000, college entrance rate has been higher for women than men. However, when it comes to workplaces, Korea ranks at the bottom among OECD countries with, for example, female executive ratio at less than 4%. So how do we close this gap? We believe Diversity in ideas, in opinions, in experiences, and in innovations improves corporate performance, eventually leading to better returns for investors. And it's important that we put money where our mouth is. So we hope that performance of the Women Fund makes impact on corporate culture in Korea, such that more corporate embrace diversity and empower women. How has the market responded? Unfortunately, it hasn't been easy to distribute the Women Fund through traditional channels, and we rely mostly on our direct-to-customer channel. One impressive fact is that a majority of our investors for this fund are those parents who either had to give up their career for childcare or who rarely see any female executives at their workplaces, yet who want their children, especially their daughters, to be able to dream big in pursuing their career without sacrificing their personal life. And we believe such investor profile supports the sustainability of this initiative. Over to you, Natasha.
Okay, thank you so much, again. That was very informative. So with this, I will stop here and hand it back to Suzanne.
Thanks so much, Natasha, and so great to hear from Meritz, one of our the funds we're so excited about. So now I want to introduce Simba Marakera Nyanjuje. Simba is here from Brightlight, and he leads their impact investing and socially responsible investing strategy across a variety of asset classes, including infrastructure, real estate, private equity, and credit, private debt, both in developed and developing worlds. And he has extensive experience investing in first-time fund managers, and he's leading Brightlight's gender lens investing strategy in Asia from his place in Australia. And Hikenju Che is the head of Yellow Dog, which is the first women-owned, women-led private venture capital and private equity fund in Korea. We're so glad to have you here because you're one of the funds that we profiled in the scan. And I just want to be able to have a little bit of a chat with you both. And I think what's exciting to me about hearing about Yellow Dog in Korea is just about the journey and the trajectory that you've taken. But let me start with Simba. Simba, I guess one of the questions is, as an institutional investor, do you feel that these funds, the kinds of funds that we're talking about, especially on the public market side, are known throughout Asia? Do people know this market?
Yeah, I mean, I think the truth is there's still limited awareness of these products that are in the market, and so this sort of emphasizes the importance of this study. However, what I would say is that there's definitely a growing awareness that investing with the gender lens is important, and that investors are starting to look for opportunities to incorporate that into their strategy. So we're very excited to see that there is a landscape study that we can share with investors, and investors can start to look into those products. I guess the second thing is that mostly institutional investors try to give strategies at least a 3-year track record before they get in. So given what we just presented, which shows that most of the funds are just about to get to that 3-year mark, we're excited to see how investors can engage with them.
And why are you excited to see gender lens investing grow in Southeast Asia and East Asia?
Yeah, so we have been investing in the region for the past 10, 15 years, and so we feel that the region still has a growth momentum. And so what excites us about gender lens investing is that it will dramatically increase the quality of opportunities that we see. I mean, even having been investing in this region without I guess an intentional focus on gender lens investing, going forward we think this will bring a lot of opportunities that would otherwise be systematically and unconsciously ignored by the market because of the lack of gender analysis in the investment process. So we're excited to see those opportunities come through, so that for us we can invest and add value to our clients.
Thank you. Well, I'll come back to you, but I want to move to Hyunju. Hyunju, it's such an exciting thing what you're doing with Yellow Dog, and I think it would be great for the audience to hear what drove you to make this new fund that you're doing.
Oh, yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Susan, for introduction. I am Hyunju Jae, CEO of Yellow Dog, and as Susan briefly introduced, Yellow Dog is an impact investing venture capital in Korea. Yellow Dog was founded in 2016 and are now managing a little over $100 million asset. As a firm led by 2 female partners, we are actually very uniquely positioned in Korea's overall venture capital market, where only 7% investment professionals are female. And if you move up the ladder and look at the senior professionals who are part of the investment committee, obviously the number is way lower than 7%. Going back to our story, actually at the beginning, gender equality itself was not our explicit impact focus. But after a year and a half or so since our first investment, we realized that even without any intentional efforts, about 1/3 of our portfolio was companies founded by women entrepreneurs. And 1/3 is 3.5 times higher than the market average in Korea. And I think there were basically mainly 3 reasons. First, female entrepreneurs proactively reached out to us. As you know, there is a significant information asymmetry in the venture capital market, and it is not easy for early stage founders to find a pool of right investors who would understand their model and provide best support. And from the investors' side as well, deal sourcing originate from their end is always not enough. You have to be the investor who the startups try to reach and want to be invested. So from women entrepreneurs' point of view, we were naturally viewed as a friendly investor who would be willing to engage and better understand them. Ironically, being one of rare players with multiple female partners on the board worked well for us and was played as an advantage, at least in this segment of female founders. Second reason is the sector you find women entrepreneurs most is consumer products and services, where most of purchasing decisions are made by female consumers. We, with the first-hand experience as consumers, were able to better understand their business and their potential. We could be a smart investor in this space. Lastly, we understand how women typically communicate and were able to navigate through their humble gestures and find the real message compared to the male-dominated venture capitals in the market. I think we had naturally better antennas to judge how well prepared they are despite the low key they usually take to avoid risk of letting down people. So with these understandings, we thought we have competitive advantages here and also came to believe if we pursue gender lens investing more explicitly, we would be able to better support more women entrepreneurs. So the first explicit attempt we took was setting a small pilot fund at a $5 million size, investing solely in female entrepreneurs. And that the start was in December 2018. And at that time, we did not take a comprehensive gender lens investing approach, mainly because it was not easy to communicate to LPs at that time. And as an impact investing VC, pursuing commercial rate of return, most of our LPs are not pure impact funders, nor philanthropic organizations. Most of them were not really familiar with the concept of gender lens investing. So we wanted to keep it simple and focused on the message saying, here are great female founders neglected by the market. We are very well equipped to find them and support them to grow. 18 months after the launch of this pilot fund, we almost finished the investment. We invested out of that fund in 7 companies and a couple of them already completed another round of funding at a significantly higher valuation. So with this evidence of potential, we were able to launch the larger subsequent fund at $15 million size earlier this month, where we will apply a wider, more comprehensive gender lens strategy. This new gender lens investing fund will invest in pre-A to Series A startups founded by women entrepreneurs, as well as startups with great potential to significantly improve quality of life for working women in Asia. And in the actually fund document itself, we specify that at least 30% of funds shall be invested in female-founded companies. And practically, and in reality, we are actually targeting much higher percentage for that fund. We were excited with this new fund, and leveraging this vehicle, we will not only make good investments, but also try to make the concept of gender lens investing better known among investors community in Korea and Asia. That's our story.
Thank you so much, Hyunju. It's great to hear about the background, and I think we could talk to you for hours. We have a lot of our other fund managers on the call, and I think Capital Development Partners, Moonshot, Teja Ventures, CEEF, Hadamar, Shinsei Bank, Root Capital, AIM. There's a real diversity, and I think I'm excited about hearing about the different investment theses that you have. I want to call out Julia Newton-House, who I think is on the call, also because the growth of the market hasn't happened by accident. There are players that I think, like yours, Hyunju, where you've seen a market opportunity and you've looked at your own portfolio and said, I really want to sharpen this opportunity. Simba, I know you've been out there really as a champion and looking at how do we find those funds and lift them up, and how do we, and I know you're part of this DFAT-funded Frontier Brokers program, but I want to also call out Investing in Women, which is a project of DFAT. And Julia, I think you have a question actually for us. But DFAT, Investing in Women, has played such a role in seed funding, CEEF, Hadamar, Capital for Development, and Root Capital to demonstrate investing in women in Southeast Asia makes sense, and really showing people what it looks like, both in terms of how they invest. And so I want to just really appreciate the funders, many of you within the AVPN community that have really come in to be the first funders to marry up with the commercial investors that I know Simba is working with and Hyunju that you're working with. So I want to invite on Raya and Natasha to come back and join us, and we'll just do a little bit of a Q&A from the questions that are coming from the audience. And one of the questions I'll just say is from Julia Newton-House. For funds which invest with a gender lens but don't use any language around gender, is this a missed opportunity to highlight a pervasive issue which adversely affects people across the gender spectrum? And can you effectively address gender disparities if you don't really call that out? And so I'd love to just start by asking Raya about that, just to get your perspective about, since we talk so much with people about language and
thank you, Suzanne. It's a great question. I think it is a lot around people becoming comfortable with what they're doing and how they're doing it before they talk about it publicly. You also, on the private market side, do have funds that been set up legally, have all their documents, have closed in terms of taking new investments. And so they can't change their investment criteria at that point, but they're certainly interested and are taking action to apply a gender lens. They are taking action in building diverse teams with their portfolio companies. And so we're finding that, especially from a capital raising or fundraising perspective, especially on the private market side, they might need to lead and be comfortable only leading with, you know, I'm focused on impact investing in Southeast Asia, or I'm focused on ocean plastic prevention in Latin America. And so they don't lead with that, but the actual work for me is the most important thing at this point, the actions they're actually taking. I think that's a huge first step.
And I think we heard a lot about gender bias, unconscious and conscious bias, in as one of the things that was keeping people from speaking so clearly about their gender lens, and so many other things that factor in. There's a question from Robert Rubenstein about Sasakawa Peace Foundation's $100 million commitment focused on this and where that focus is. I think also another question from someone else about who are the key investors in Asia. And since you are one of them, Natasha, I thought you could obviously take that one about where your focus is.
Yes, so the question on the asset class that we invest in. So at this moment, we're only investing into private debt, so the alternatives, and we're not yet investing in any listed equities yet, primarily because we can't find suitable products in Asia yet. Well, there are 10 that I've just mentioned, but we're still reviewing them, but haven't really gone to the asset class yet. Moving forward, we do want to diversify our asset class into both liquid and illiquid. So yeah, we'll see. At this moment, it's only illiquid in private debt.
But I know obviously that you're using your power as a philanthropist, as a philanthropic organization, to really seed the market in terms of research and tools.
Exactly.
And I think one of the things that's exciting that we saw in the report is the plethora of new tools that are coming out. And CEIF has a scorecard which they're sharing widely. I think there's a new report that's going to be coming out from Value for Women about tools and techniques in the private market side. And then I know that Criterion Institute is writing quite a lot about the tools and the process by how we invest. And so I think it's for funders like yourself to be backing the development of these tools and the development of the knowledge and the research, I think, is equally important. But I know a lot of people are saying, who else is really investing? And so, Simba, I think it would be great for you to share just a little bit about the investor perspective and who you see as your fellow co-investors. Where's that appetite?
Yeah, so I think in terms of investor appetite and where that's coming from our perspective, as you have discovered, I guess, in the research, we are seeing foundations and private wealth investors being some of the first movers in this space, and I guess they're quicker to move because they don't have as onerous criteria as a pension fund or insurance company would have. So we are seeing, those kind of investors coming up first. However, with institutional investors like pension funds and insurance companies, there is also, in a sense, impetus from their membership, whether it's their people with retirement savings or their shareholders, etc., to start to think a bit more actively about how they invest their money with the gender lens approach. And so we are seeing sort of appetite there, and they're still in the process of reviewing some of these new strategies. However, while they're doing that, they start to incorporating gender lens into their overall strategy. So, for example, ensuring that their equities managers, public equities managers, are thinking about women in leadership or gender diversity in employment of the companies that they're investing in, etc., as part of their strategy. So they're not necessarily investing in gender lens strategies, but they are incorporating the gender analysis into their overall portfolio. So we expect them to move towards actually allocating capital to gender strategies as they complete their analysis there, and as those products mature and have a bit of track record that they would want to see.
Thank you. Hyunju, maybe you could just share very quickly the type of investors that are coming in behind your strategy, both in your first gender fund and your second one.
Yes, there are roughly 3 groups of
investors in our fund. And for first category is police institutions in Korea, and police institutions are actually the very important anchor LPs for a lot of Korean venture capital funds. And so police institutions with a policy objective to nurture the female entrepreneurship is an important LP group. And the second is the general funders with an impact focus. And the third group is actually the strategic investors that need to expand their business portfolio into the consumer services and goods. And they know the gender lens investing and the female entrepreneurship is a strong advantage that can be played in this consumer space. So they are also another important group of funders in our fund.
Thank you. That's great. And somebody sent a question, how can we include more male investors as GPs and LPs to be part of gender lens investing? I think Tom Schmidt, you might be on the line with us from Moonshot Ventures in Indonesia, which is launching a new vehicle to invest specifically in women entrepreneurs in Indonesia. And I know that Patamar has a really gender, in fact, all of the funds that we talked to in Southeast Asia really had more gender balanced teams. So they're there. They may be a little bit hidden. I want to give, just in our last couple of minutes here, each of our panelists just 30 seconds to say if there's one thing that we could do to continue to build the market that you're excited about or have people think about, what would it be? So I'm going to start with Raya, go to Natasha, Simba, and Hyunju. Raya?
Sorry, finding the microphone button first. Thank you, Suzanne. If there was one thing, it would be to continue to ask the questions as you, especially as investors or you as fund managers, are pursuing your investments of the portfolio companies or the public companies you're investing in, or as investors in those funds. Ask what all funds are doing in regards to considering gender in their investment strategy, and that's an excellent starting point. And then as you move your comfort level, you get more and more into actually making those investments, but that's what creates change. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thank you. Natasha?
Yeah, I think from the standpoint of an investor and the foundation, we would love to see more and more blended finance structure coming out actually, and that would require stakeholders working together, providing first loss, commercial investors, and grants to do cover the expense, etc. So we would really love to see more such kind of structure that's been initiated and participated by different kind of stakeholders.
Thank you. And I know that there are some new funds that are just coming into the market announced for 2020 that didn't make it into our study, but that are blended finance vehicles that I think we're all very excited about. Simba?
Yeah, I think the key thing that we're excited about for us is the ability to bring gender lens investing vehicles at scale to the market and ensuring that those vehicles are easily accessible by, I guess, all types of investors. In particular, if you're targeting investors such as, private wealth investors or even retail investors that don't have a lot of tools to analyze investments. So from our perspective, we are leveraging, blended finance structures and bringing to market either fixed income instruments or large-scale funds. Because I think that's the thing that's exciting to me going forward, that these funds end up being as large as other funds in the market and as accessible as other funds in the market. And I can see that coming in 2020, 2021 as the movement continues to grow.
Thank you, and I know you're going to have some of your own announcements to be making next year, and so we'll all stay tuned about that.
Yeah.
And I want to say it's about breadth and depth, and some of the most exciting funds we looked at were some of the smaller funds because they're really getting capital out to a different market. Hyunju, I'm going to give you the last word here. any quick thing that you think that we should do to really continue to grow the market, or what you're most excited about?
I still sometimes face the misperception from the funders. We would have a lower bar for female founders in our investment decision. And I think we need really to prove there are really attractive investment opportunities good for both society and investors. And also the current market is an unlevel playing ground for women and minorities for the larger group of funders.
Thank you. Well, I am so appreciative of all of you and the work that you're doing to build the field, and all of the people on this call who have dialed in, and the fund managers that we got a chance to speak to. I'm personally so excited about people having a sense of being able to see their creativity, their passion, their commitment, not only, again, to what they're investing in, but how they're investing, and this is part of how we change the world. So thank you again to Sasakawa Peace Foundation, to AVPN, and to all of you for being part of this. And if people want to get a chance to see the report when it comes out, make sure that we get your email address. We'd love to hear from all of you, and we're sure that this is a continuing journey, so glad to be on it with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Due to time constraints, we do have to come to a close on this session on building the case for gender lens investing in Asia. It was a very exciting and informative hour. I know I certainly learned a lot, and we were joined by 500 people today from across the world, which is great news for spreading the message about gender lens investing. If you would like to continue learning about the investment vehicles discussed today, you can email potential@sagana.com for more details. And this link is also listed in the link pod at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. This session was made possible with the kind support of our lead partners, Chandler Foundation, Stockholm Environment Institute, and EDAM Prize. Our knowledge partners, the Ford Foundation, and of course our key partner for this session, the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. To continue chatting with your speakers and fellow delegates in this session, AVPN members and full access ticket holders can make full use of the AVPN connector. The link may be found in the resource section at the bottom of your screen. In this section, you will also find the link to our new gender platform. This is where you can identify synergies with our members to scale gender equality, connect with women-led enterprises and deals that support women and girls, and share your blogs, studies, and success stories. Do share your highlights of this session on social media, and remember to tag us using the hashtag AVPN2020. Before you go, we have 2 quick survey questions that we would love to have your input on, which are 1, what you felt the most useful insights are from today's session, and 2, what the most surprising insights were. Your answers to these questions will not be published. Up next is how will COVID-19 affect the outlook for impact investment in Southeast Asia, which will be starting at 3:30 p.m. Singapore time. Thank you so much for joining us today, and please enjoy the rest of the conference.